So one of the biggest challenges with being a rabbi is figuring out what to speak about on the high holidays. Some of the possibilities are really pretty easy. The renewal of the world, the idea of New Year's resolutions, the story of the Akedah, the binding of Isaac, themes of repentance or brokenness or forgiveness, and for Yizkor, the message of remembrance and continuity. There are hundreds of ways to spin any of those ideas into meaningful and compelling sermons for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and rabbis have done that for decades. But then there are what I have termed topical sermons. For example, when 9/11 occurred, most rabbis had no choice but to speak about it in some way on Rosh Hashanah and or Yom Kippur. Other topical sermons that rabbis, including myself, have given over the years had to do with Israel and with whatever flavor of crisis was existent at the time. We've spoken about climate change, nuclear proliferation, national elections, abortion, gender identity, gender rights, racism, anti-Semitism, apartheid, ecology. I'm guessing more than a few have recently spoken about the gift and the danger of AI. With so many possibilities, how do we decide? And what gets left on the table or on the cutting floor, so to speak? For me, it's always been this balancing act. When something cannot be ignored, well, it rises to the very top of the list, such as 9/11. But over the course of my career, I often had to give 5 high holiday sermons every year when I was a solo rabbi. And occasionally, when I had a big staff, I would just give 1. For the last several years that I was the rabbi in Kansas City, I would speak 3 times. So I tended to focus on the ideas that I call eternal: tshuva, tzedakah, the Akedah, forgiveness. Those would be the majority, and I would choose usually 1 topical sermon and trying to create somewhat of a balance. So the question is, what were the sermons that we didn't give this year here at Beth Am? First and foremost, as you know, we didn't speak directly about Israel. Rabbi Heath gave a wonderful sermon yesterday, but his topic was about difficult conversations and how we talk about things, but we didn't really talk about Israel. Now, I'll tell you, a number of folks spoke with me early in September, lobbying me that we in fact talk about Israel. And of course, suggesting that their position be the one that we should advocate in the sermon. Now, here are a few of the Israel sermons I might have given based on these suggestions. 1, Israel seems to be losing friends, countries, political parties, organizations, individuals, at a rate never seen in almost 80 years. We, the Jewish people, need to remain steadfast in supporting the people of Israel and the idea of Israel. 2, the definition of Zionism is under attack. I am old enough to remember the United Nations Resolution 3379, adopted November 1973, that equated Zionism with racism. While this resolution was eventually revoked in 1991, the damage was done. It reinforced an anti-Semitic trope that suggested a Jewish desire to return to a historic and spiritual homeland was a binary choice. Either have a Jewish state and be racist, or abandon the enterprise and be non-racist. Zionism instead is about the desire of those who wish to live in and build a Jewish country. It is not about race. 3, what is happening today in Gaza is horrific. Not one of us would want to be a civilian living in Gaza today. While there may be many who are Hamas operatives or Hamas sympathizers, there is no doubt, at least in my mind, that there are innocent human beings who, by accident of birth, are in Gaza and are suffering terribly. They suffer from lack of basic services, housing, medical, educational, and I'm guessing, as we've seen, from food. How can we, as caring human beings, not want that suffering to end? 4, Hamas has brought this tragedy onto itself. While Israel has responsibility for how it has prosecuted this war, Hamas has the power to end the suffering, the bombardments, the destruction, by releasing all the hostages and laying down the arms. That's part of the 20-point peace plan. Hamas is the culprit, and the world must be reminded of this. 5. And finally, anti-Semitism has co-opted the Gaza war to its own nefarious purposes. As we all know, it is growing like some unstoppable viral infection. In this new year, how do we navigate both our lives and our relationships with our children and grandchildren, as Rabbi Heath spoke about yesterday, who, having raised them to care for the underdog, see protest against the Gaza war not as a manifestation of Jew hate, but of genocide against the Palestinian people. Those were the Israel sermons that were suggested to me. In the spirit of Rabbi Axelrod and his core belief in human dignity, I thought actually about speaking about immigration, on the administration's determination to make coming into the U.S. a matter of financial ability. The golden visa, the new application fee of $100,000 for the H-1B visas are counter to how this country was built. Most of our families would not be let in the U.S. if arriving to its shores today. How do we as Jews respond? I thought about that sermon. Or I thought about the attacks that are occurring against the LGBTQA plus community through various state laws and the whittling away of rights, the banning of gender-affirming surgeries and treatments, the banning of trans athletes, and the continued diminution of our friends and family as something less than equal. Which led me to consider speaking about the hard shift to the right of our social and political landscape. Regardless of being Republican or Democrat or Libertarian or centrist, it's alarming for us as Jews to hear from the highest levels of government that the United States was and is and should be a Christian country. Or that the proposal brought to the Oklahoma legislature, I don't know if you read this, that requires every college and university in Oklahoma to build in a prominent location a statue to the memory of Charlie Kirk, saluting him and his belief in Christian dominance. And for all those heavy sermon topics, I considered a few not so topical, the ones that I consider eternal. I considered talking about God. Now, I know that's a novel idea, and I'm guessing there are many in our community who either don't believe in God or whose relationship is tenuous at best. While 95% of our prayers we recite in some way reference the divine, we Jews don't handle talking about God very well. Our Christian and Muslim neighbors have far, far fewer issues, at least when it comes to speaking about God. So why us? And what does it mean to have God in our lives? Like I said, those are the easy sermons. Another sermon I've always wanted to give on Yom Kippur, but never have, is the should'ves, would'ves, and could'ves of life. We seem to go through life regretting so much. I should have taken that job. What would have happened if I hadn't said that? If only I could have taken advantage of that opportunity. How do we deal with that guilt and regret which seems so pervasive in our lives? Finally, this year marks the 50th year that I have led High Holiday services, from Ishpeming, Michigan, to Pretoria, South Africa, to Kansas City, and here in Los Altos Hills, along with a half dozen other locations. Now, throughout those journeys, I've been an observer of how the Jewish community exists, how it chooses to structure itself. And for many years, I believe that what we do is antiquated and needs to be completely blown up. So another sermon I've always wanted to give on the High Holidays, but have never had the guts to do it, was to present a new model of Jewish life for individuals, for synagogues, for institutions. So as you can tell, choosing just 5 sermon topics to address, spread out over 3 rabbis and a cantor, leaves a lot on the table, so to speak. A few years ago, while serving my congregation in Kansas City, I was meeting with our confirmation class the day after Yom Kippur. I gave them all the sermons that we gave that high holidays, 5 of them. I asked them to divide up into groups and then to summarize the sermons. And then I asked them what would be the sermon they would give either on Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur. Well, their answers, as you might expect, were sometimes silly, but were sometimes profound. One student wanted to talk about how soccer was a metaphor for life. One wanted to explain that Judaism was fine culturally, but that the religious God stuff was a bunch of malarkey. My words, not hers. She used more colorful language. And another wanted to do a cooking demonstration on Rosh Hashanah, on the bima, on how to make the perfect brisket. He believed, he was an aspiring chef, and he believed that gastronomic Judaism was going to be the saving remnant for the Jewish people. Okay? Now, I'm not sure if their sermons were any better or worse than the ones that we gave, but each had a valid message. And that's my point. On this day after Yom Kippur, we've heard 5 messages, 1 from Rabbi Nambi, 2 from Rabbi Heath, and 2 from me. We would love your feedback, your compliments, of course, but also your disagreements. Also, of the sermons that I didn't give and that we didn't give, is there 1 or 2 that you would want to hear in the coming weeks and months? Finally, and this is the question I want to leave you with, what is the sermon that you would give? What is your essential message that you would want 1,200 households of Beth Am to hear? What is your Torah that you would like to teach? Our tradition teaches that our fates are written in the book of life on Rosh Hashanah, and that they are sealed on Yom Kippur. However, so our tradition says, the ink of that decree is not dried until the end of Sukkot. So in the next few days, as we consider what our lives will look like in this year 5786, what will be the sermons that you will give, and to whom will you give them? Shabbat Shalom. We're going to end our service as you contemplate what your sermon